Howdy, fella nerf herders. I like me a good old space western. I don't like having them spoiled by Bantha Poodoo yapping too much. The following is just two Mando-loving scoundrels talking about the show. So if you don't want spoilers, then turn your tauntaun now and head back to base. So long, and happy listening.
Welcome back, Mando.
I have spoken. I've never met a real Mandalorian. Heard stories. I know they're good at killing.
Find Ahsoka Tano. Tell her you were sent by Bo-Katan. This is the way.
Well, welcome everybody back to another episode of This Is The Way, your one-stop shopping for all things Mandalorian.
That's right.
Maybe not all things, but for the majority of things, Mandalorian.
For all things Mandalorian. We got Beskar armor, we got a spear over here, we've got your own sigil, if you just want a tattoo.
We got your spear right here. His name is Paul Revere. So we're back for another episode, and this is chapter 13, The Jedi. And man, what an episode.
Man, if you've been ignoring the spoiler warning at the beginning of this one, then don't do it for this episode, because holy cow, they just lay it all on the line this time.
Yeah. Just a whole bunch of information, so I hope you stick around with us. I hope we help you answer a few things. We'll probably open just as many more questions as possible as well, but I was just really, really enjoying this episode. So I say we just jump on into it. What do you say, Danny?
Yeah, I think that it deserves jumping on in. It's there we go. Now the door is closed. It is absolutely worth just jumping on in and getting this whole thing started, because man, there's a lot to unpack with this episode.
Yeah. So episode starts off where we're at Corbus, which is the planet that Mando was told to go to find one Ahsoka Tano. And we're not even messing around here, man. It opens up, and this place is desolate, man. It looks terrible. But I do love the fact of we're kind of seeing something different again. And that's what I'm enjoying about this series more than anything else, is we're not just running over the same places over and over like we're used to seeing with the movies and everything. So we're at Corbus, and there's this village, and it's got a big wall around it, and right from the bat we got Ahsoka Tano out fighting all these faceless goons, man, just out in these dead trees. Kind of looks like a dried up marsh.
Yeah, just like everything in The Mandalorian so far. I mean, every planet has been relatable but different. It's not like Coruscant, where everything is kind of just weird technology everywhere. It's got wilderness, and this wilderness looked kind of like almost like a forest that's been desolated by a fire.
Yeah. Not to mention those big creatures that are walking around back there. I don't have any idea what those are, but they're eating what's left of the trees.
Yeah, and I thought for a while, for a minute I thought they were rancors, because from a distance I couldn't see their front legs. Their front legs were kind of silhouetted, and I thought they were other trees. But yeah, there's some kind of weird grazing animal with giant mouths that eat trees whole.
Hold that image, though, man. Imagine a planet full of rancors running around eating your trees. That's pretty awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think rancors have carnivorous teeth, and they definitely ate slaves and stuff. But the rancors just run around on Dathomir, I think, is where they live.
Yeah. But anyways, Ahsoka Tano is just making hash meat out of these foot soldiers out here. A bunch of morons running around with some face mask on. I've lost vision. I mean,
yeah.
they're pretty useless, but hey, you work with what you got, I guess. And man, I mean, she is living up to everything we've expected her to be so far.
Yeah, well, the build on her reveal was so much that they had to do it right. And I think they did a great job of having her appear and just in an initial flurry of action, introducing her to the plot. You know, she's playing this cat and mouse game with all these guards in the woods, and she does the Obi-Wan snap trick, you know, where she does her hand kind of twists, and when she does, there's a snap off in the distance, and of course they bite, you know, they go run that way, and she just takes them out. We were double lightsabers, man. It's just awesome.
Yeah. And I love of course, the whole samurai feel of this too, where, you know, she does the swipe, and not only does she kill this kind of foot soldier guy, but she also splits that tree, and she's standing motionless, but you see the tree fall in front of her.
Yeah.
It's like, man, it's so killer, man.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they definitely wanted to go, you know, part way gunslinger and part way samurai flick with this one. And, you know,
yep.
With the Magnificent Seven, we've seen that those two genres really play well together. And so it's kind of been a long time coming.
Yeah. Yeah. But long story short, Ahsoka Tano comes up to the front gate of this village, and we get to see our new bad people, our new bad guys for this movie. And one of them is Morgan Elsbeth. And we get a little story on her later on in the episode of who she is, where she comes from. But apparently all we need to know is she pretty much goes from planet to planet, and they all pretty much end up looking like this one does, and she kills everybody off and just moves the next one. So basically she's the tall man.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very much, if you've ever watched Princess Mononoke, you know, there's the bad guy in that who's kind of industry. You know, she builds weapons and hurts nature, and I don't know if that's what happened to the planet and why it's desolate, or if it was like that before. But kind of in the formative scenes when they pan in, you see a factory off in the distance, like spouting smoke. So it's very possible that it used to be a fairly flourishing thing. But definitely the community that lives in the little gated city where she is, they're oppressed. They're afraid to talk to people and all that. And she tells us, she tells Ahsoka, she says, you know, look, is the information you want from me worth the lives of these citizens? And she rolls out this guy, and it's pretty clear that she's willing to kill him. And Ahsoka doesn't even bite. She's like, I'm not negotiating with you. If you choose to kill somebody, you choose to kill somebody. You'll kill him anyway. So I'm going to give you one day, and then I'll be back. And if I'm back, you got trouble.
Right. So yeah, you got to love that setup, because she's calling her bluff on it. Like you said, you know, that's not going to stop you from killing somebody because you're just that bad of a person to begin with. So we're kind of getting the background on this is a person that utilizes anything and everything to get her advantage. And off to her side, we meet Lang, which is played by the awesome Michael Biehn, man. I when he came on the screen, I looked at my wife and I was like, I think that's Michael Biehn.
It took me a little longer than that. I think about halfway through the episode, I saw him and I said, I think it's Michael Biehn. Yeah, I always think of that guy that we met in Texas who had the Tombstone poster, and he had everybody, you know, sign it. And when he met Michael Biehn, he said he signed right over his face. And he was like, well, can you just sign over here? And Michael Biehn, without even looking at him, just signed right across his face. And so I don't know how good a guy Michael Biehn is, but it was good to see him again. I mean, we have a lot of love for him being Terminator and in Tombstone and
Aliens.
And Aliens. I mean, oh yeah, how could I forget Hicks? You know, it's good to see him working. It's good to see all these people back in the focus.
This is the role that he plays so well too, man. It's just like what you described. It's the guy that you come up and meet, and he's kind of good guy, bad guy all at the same time. Yeah, I'll sign your poster. Right?
Right.
And so he's perfect in this role because he's that guy where, hey, I don't have any quarrel with you, but I'll shoot you when you're not looking. I mean, he's that kind of guy. Ex-military, they kind of say. But what I want to talk about, even though I love Michael Biehn, the HK-87 assassin droids, man. I love these things. You only get to see a couple of them, and they're not incredible, but I love them because they remind me so much of the droids that are on the black hole. And I think it's the stiffness of them, right?
Right.
Because we've gotten so used to droids that will talk and, communicate. And these things are just stiff, move very robotic. That's what they feel like to me. Totally expressionless. They have no voice or anything that really gives you an expression. There's something I really like about them because they're just made to do what they do, and that's it. They don't put any kind of, relationable thing behind them. And something I really like about them. And they look awesome. They kind of got the German war helmet kind of thing going on and robot face. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I definitely, I definitely agree. I think that the Assassin Droid series are often between the IG-11 series, the IG-88, the IG series, and like Forlom. They have kind of rounded features to make them look a little more human, like somebody was trying. But then they just kind of gave up for functionality, and then all their joints, like their hips and stuff, are real thin. And if you watch Revenge of the Sith. Right, Revenge of the Sith, at the beginning, Grievous has like 8 of these dudes, and they have those shock quarterstaffs. And those guys would have been better suited to fight Ahsoka Tano. These guys have been outfitted with guns, so they're probably more like suppression of an uprising.
Yeah.
But well, I love the one. There's one scene comes later where one of these guys grabs a hold of a gutter on a low hanging roof. And vaults himself up, and he kind of does a somersault, and it's like he lifts and rolls, and it's very mechanical, but it's also really cool.
I've got it wrote down. He rolls up the roof.
yeah, it would look great.
Yeah, I was impressed with that too. But these things again, they don't make them out to be the thing to look out for. I mean, they're just assassin droids. So you send them on their mission, and that's it. But yeah, I love the fact that Ahsoka Tano just basically says, "I'll see you tomorrow."
right. So moving along with the plot, I mean, these guys. So you got Din showing up with the child, and they pull down onto the surface of the planet, and Din's like, I think I'll head on into this town, and we'll try and get some leads. And nobody will talk to him. It's very much the town that dreaded sundown. They've got they've got a despot as a magistrate, and they're afraid to say anything to anybody. And it's not long before one of the faceless guard guys comes up and says, "Hey, the magistrate wants to talk to you because we got to get this plot moving."
Yeah, and the fact of course, all I could think was Vlad the Impaler when he's walking up to that temple gate, and you get those peoples in those torture chamber things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, she's sending the message to everybody there that I'm in charge and this is what happens when you don't do what I tell you to do. And just, displaying them. And those are pretty cool, too, because the electric shock and you see their skeleton when they get shocked. Yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's horrifying.
Yeah, so it does the job and keeps everybody at bay and nobody rebels because they ain't got no hats.
That's right, because the sun beats down on them all day. But he meets with the magistrate, and she says, "I've got a problem. It's a Jedi problem." And he's like, "Oh, you can't afford me." And she's like, "Oh, try me." And she produces what? A spear made of solid Beskar, right? Pure Beskar.
Yeah, right. He even gives it the cling test where he pops it on a piece of his armor and it goes, bing, and it just rings,
It's like a tuning fork kind of deal where, I guess when Beskar meets Beskar, it's pure, it makes this ring. And, they haven't gone into that, but obviously just the storytelling, exactly what's going on. He's testing it for purity, and she's like, "That's right, pure Beskar." And, she tells him it'll be his if he saw. And I'm going to ask you, do you think that spear would be his if he had actually completed this, or if she would have just killed him?
You don't know with this character, right? I mean, that's the thing is, I don't know. Being that she was obviously scared of Ahsoka, I think it's very possible, but easily could back out of the gig or the deal too. So everybody else does with him, right?
Yeah, it's true.
We had a deal. I held up my head. I mean, he says that pretty much every episode now. So
It's true. I mean, and I thought the spear was cool, and and then you find out what Beskar does when it encounters lightsabers, which is it blocks it.
Right. And we get a good shot of that too, because he gets the information he wants from her, even though she feels like, the deal is he's going to go out and do this job and, she hired him. But it gives him the information he's looking for, because his whole point is to find Ahsoka Tano and deliver the child. And they meet up, and at first they don't like each other.
Well, I want to talk about this scene for just a second, because the second time I watched it, I realized he takes off his rifle scope and he's scanning the horizon, and he just sees those long-legged dewbacks out there, and he looks across and he's like, well, I guess it was a false alarm. And about the time he drops the thing, Ahsoka Tano's on him with the lightsaber, right? And it is absolutely this scene from the first Star Wars where Luke,
sand people.
Yeah, he has the viewers, and he's looking across. He goes, "Huh, Bantha's out there, but I don't see any sand people." And then he gets attacked. It's the same setup and everything.
Yeah, there's several of those in this episode.
It's so good because it's so familiar.
When he's landing the ship, you got the guy out there with the scanner that's scanning the ship when it goes by, and it looks just like
Yavin 4. Yeah. With the rebel base at the end of A New Hope. Right. Yeah, I didn't catch that one, but I'm sure I noticed.
Yeah, and this episode is just full of those tips of the hats. Even in the soundtrack, you hear hints of Yoda's theme and stuff. You hear part of the Tatooine theme where the sun, the two suns are setting. Yeah. There's a little piece of that, very similar. So yeah, they're really pulling all this stuff out. Of course, we've got to mention too that David Filoni directed this, which he's kind of the co-creator of Ahsoka Tano. So there's been a lot of hoopla about that being a factor too, because that's a Star Wars fanboy kind of dream, right? As this guy's like, oh,
right.
Like people look at Kevin Smith,
Yeah, I actually watched the little, the Disney Plus has got a little, making of the show thing where they do a round table with the directors from the first season. And I hadn't watched it, but Lois cut it on after we were done with the episode, and it really was entertaining to watch the directors of the first season just jumping in there.
Yeah, and coming from this, they have a little battle, which is very reminiscent of stuff that's from Return of the Jedi, because he uses this grappling rope on her, and she goes up and over a limb, and it pulls him up, and he gets smart enough to undo himself, unlatch himself from it, so he lands back down. But they're just kind of showing that, there's always been this rift between the Mandalorian and the Jedi, and but he finally stops her and says, "Hey, I'm here to talk to you about something." And she sees the baby. She says, "Well, I hope it's about him."
Yeah,
and again, it's a little short blast of action right here, but it's very well done. And Rosario Dawson, I mean, come on. The casting that they're doing in these shows now, incredible.
I agree. And, I was thinking of how Ahsoka is an alien, and therefore they need to find somebody who bears a resemblance, but there are a lot of things that they can do with prosthetics to make her look like the character that was originally rendered, as a CGI animated character. But, they could have also gone way off course, and they've done a great job of making sure that everybody they cast is true to the character.
Right.
And, one of the things that I wanted to point out, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but, in this time of inclusion, where so many protagonists we've had growing up were just white dudes who, you and I, we would definitely, appreciate that. I mean, we're white dudes, but one of the things I think the Mandalorian brings is they can make him a protagonist, and since they never show his face, you can kind of put yourself in that role. He's not a specific kind of person, and so in that way, a lot of people can acquaint themselves as the protagonist here. I think it's cool. Sure. I think that's why they probably don't want to move too far away from the "I don't remove my helmet" thing, because in that way, he's kind of an everyman. Yep,
which is, I think, a lot of the heroes that we've grown up with. You think about all of our masked heroes we grew up with, Spider-Man, all this stuff. Even though we know otherwise that he's just a white dude with a camera, but when he's masked up, it could be anybody, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're exactly nailing it right here is, yeah, could be you, could be me, could be anybody, could be a guy from Pluto, right? And that's what makes it work. And that's just the beauty of Star Wars in general. I mean, I know that's a Star Trek-y kind of trope that they used, right? Because it was always about the universal thing, which Star Wars is the same way. So, but yeah, they meet each other, and he says, look, I've been on a mission trying to find you to deliver this baby. And she sits down with the baby, and they start communicating, which I think is done very well, because what I didn't like about the sign language and the sand people conversation thing, here you don't have to have it, right? It's understood because they're using the Force to react to each other's feelings. And I really like that. You don't have to explain everything. You see her nod, and she's getting information, and there's communication happening, but you don't have to hear words. And she comes back and tells the Mando that his name is Grogu. So we get finally a name for the baby, Grogu. And she talks about he was raised in the Jedi Temple in Coruscant. And of course, when everything hit the fan, somebody, this is a big thing too, somebody came and took him from the temple. I feel like there's going to be a lead into that somehow. I just happened, for some reason, I caught it the second time around, and it just stood out to me that, wait a minute, somebody. You know?
Well, it was obviously a whole bunch of Weequay who were going to set up this, like, sandy base camp on a desert world and just wait.
Okay.
No. I mean, I heard that too, and I wondered. I was like, well, how did he end up where he ended up? Because he was in some kind of like there were all these outlaws in this base camp. They had him in a crib. But what was going on there? So I guess between point A and point B is a story in itself.
I mean, the fact that they don't say that he was just a little toddler is being kept. I mean, he was being trained by Jedi masters.
Yeah,
at this young age.
Again, that's one of those things where I'm not really poking holes in the story. I mean, he was young, he was an infant, so there were limits to what he could comprehend. But I find this whole thing really interesting that for 20 years before the 30 years that he was, I guess the darkness in his history before the Mando finds him, it's an interesting thought that he went through some kind of training and while he was a baby. Yeah, and of course, you do the Yoda math, right? 900 you become. So I mean, their lifespan is huge. So they may stay an infant for a lot longer than normal, but they still have the ability to gain knowledge. They just probably can't communicate it. So that's an interesting twist. But I still think somewhere down the line, this someone who took him thing might pop back up. And we'll see. But I love coming out of that and the explanation of all this stuff that you got Ahsoka Tano setting the Force straight again, right? Hey, the Force is in everything, right? You know how I feel about all that. I mean, I'm every time they do that, it's kind of like when you go to Texas Frightmare and Tom Holland says something, you stand up and clap. That's the way I was when she delivered this line, because I'm like, yes, because that's the way it should be. You don't need the explanation of how and why. It's just the fact of it's in everything. You either have it or you don't. And, the possibility that everybody could have it is a nice possibility, but chances are you don't, right? Right. And I know the sequels get a lot of flack, but I think the Last Jedi, they tried to kind of give it a, hey, there's no hereditary Force thing here. You don't have to be in the right family. You don't have to be in the royal family to inherit the Force. And they were trying to step away from that. And people, I'm not going to get on all the fans. And people didn't like it, so they moved back from that.
Yeah.
And so there you go. But just like Yoda said, when you're first learning about the Force, really is that it's between all living things. And everything has a little bit of it, and some people have a lot of it, and some things are more attuned to it. And I do agree. I like the way she did this too, because Din was like, yeah, he can do these things. You mean his powers? And she kind of rolls her eyes like, it's the Force. It's not his powers. It's his attunement to the power. And I really like the fact that she's like, oh, you simple cretin, you know?
Right. Which, I mean, he's even getting it from his own kind, right? Because, oh, you're one of those. You know?
Yeah. He's got a lot to learn, right? You know, he's a formidable opponent, but he's got a lot to learn about life. And that's pretty cool too.
Which is another factor of why we like him, right? Because he's the Bruce Campbell, right? Hey, I'm just winging it here. I'm just doing what I can. I don't know everything.
Hold on.
There you go.
And you know, so she says, you know, tomorrow we'll test him and see how this goes. And the next day, she levitates a pebble over to him, and sees if he can to levitate it back. And this is where you get kind of Din as a father, you know, where he's like, come on, show him what you can do, And when he doesn't, you know, I think he kind of believes that she doesn't believe that it'll happen, because he's been through this whole scenario where he's telling people about it, and I'm sure people have said, yeah, whatever, this baby can levitate stuff, whatever. But he's trying to prove it to somebody that it really matters now, and the baby isn't performing. You know, it's like that frog from Looney Tunes, you know, that won't sing.
Oh, it's a great example. It's a great example.
Well, and he's like, oh, you know, you can hear little groans. Oh, come on, you know. But he manages to do it by, you know, there's that little trinket that goes on the end of his shifter dial in the Razor Crest, and the child has unscrewed it and taken it early to have it as his toy, and he says, "Oh, I know what you want." He lifts up that trinket, and it entices the child, Grogu, into levitating it to himself. And he's like, see what he can do? It's very a proud father moment. I really liked it.
And I like how he's kind of Han Solo-ish too, because he's, come on, kid. You can do it, kid. See there? You know, he's got those kind of mannerisms. And you're right, it's that proud papa kind of thing. Because this is also a way for him to close a chapter right here, right? See, there you go. He did it. He's yours. There you go. See y'all later. And that's kind of what he's wanting, is to get on with his life, because, you know, he's got things to do, but this is taking priority. So, yep, he tells her, hey, there you go. I need your help. My task was to get him here. You're supposed to take him from here. And she says, hey, I can't train him. Because she sensed a lot of anger in him, right? Or a lot of fear in him.
It was his connection to Din, and that, you know, and we've seen that when someone has too much connection to one person, or one, or one person, it really makes it to where they feel like they can justify all these things. And with the power that the child obviously has with the Force, it could cause a problem. And Ahsoka knows what that looks like firsthand.
Yeah, and I love her referring to the dangers, which, I mean, how many times have we seen a Jedi Master go, yep, I'm not training you? I mean, it happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I came all this way. Yeah, well, I'm not training you. Nope, you're too old. Nope, you're too ugly. I mean, whatever the excuse is.
Yeah, they're very selective.
Yeah. I love, though, that she refers to the anger, and she's seen it happen to the best of them, right? And she's referring obviously to Anakin, who was her teacher, and so she has that fear because she's sensing that same thing with baby Grogu the same way. And I can't help you, but I can't help train him, but you know, we'll see what happens. He's like, hey, how about this? I know you got this problem with this little village. I help you, and you train him.
I love that, you know, so this happens twice in the episode where Din's talking to Elspeth, and he says, hey, you know, tell me where this Jedi is. He doesn't say, I'll go kill her. He says, tell me where the Jedi is, because this is what he wanted to do anyway. Similarly, Ahsoka says, I'll help you. He says, I'll help you with your problem. You see to it that Grogu is properly trained. I wrote down the quote because I was like, oh, you know, they were careful to make sure that if Ahsoka agreed to this, she wasn't being a liar. You know, she says, look, you know, but she says, okay, we'll see to it that he's properly trained. It doesn't necessarily mean that Ahsoka continues on as the trainer.
Right.
And I thought it was a cool way to make the dialogue keep everybody true to their,
Sure.
yeah,
Leave her a loophole. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, right afterward, he mentions her laser swords, which whenever laser swords are mentioned, it brings a smile to everybody's face because it's like, it's a lightsaber, but they don't, right? So your laser swords won't help you here. It's just it's a great trope that keeps coming up.
Yeah. And this is where she gives the backstory of who Morgan is, where she came from the Clone Wars, where she became this instrument of the Empire. Just enough to reassure you again, this is a bad person. And then all of a sudden, man, we get back to that front gate of that village, and it is on.
It is on. Let me just say everything about this: the music, the pacing, just. And I don't know that I've said it, but this episode is awesome. Yeah. It is probably the culmination of every episode coming so far, where it's just like now you've seen the Mandalorian way. Now you're suddenly seeing them interact with the Jedi, and they have this age-old rivalry. It's like a different kind of gunslinger coming into town that's just as good.
Yeah, and her climbing up the bell tower of the wall and just dicing through these people and then splitting that bell in half.
Oh yeah.
It was awesome.
I mean, she goes fast and furious. She's blocking, blaster shots with like a baseball bat. She's knocking them all back. She kills these guys, and then they've got this warning bell that they've been hitting, and it's probably like 15 feet across, and it probably weighs 2 tons. And she just chops it in half, and the thing falls into town square. It's just awesome.
And then it cuts to Morgan and her group coming out from behind the wall of the temple because they know something's happening.
Right.
And there she stands. Ahsoka Tano's down at the end of this long walkway, and it's straight up out of a samurai flick. I mean,
yeah.
You got the little lanterns that are blowing in the air and the smoke behind her, and she's walking towards them. Yeah, man. It's so good. It's so good.
It's incredible. Yeah. And like, it's that gunslinger walk. She starts walking toward him and that, she's not going to take no for an answer. She's here to get it done.
Right.
And, I guess at this point you're starting to wonder, where's Din? And I knew at that point, I was like, Mando's job is the hostages because Ahsoka says, we need to get the hostages free before anything. She knows that Elspeth is willing to kill them, and she knows that she has to do what she has to do. So she's kind of okay with it, but she doesn't want to be complicit. So she makes it a priority to save these hostages. And when you don't see Mando in this first sequence, that's his job.
Yeah. Well, she even takes a piece of his armor and throws it down and says, "Your bounty hunter failed."
Ooh, good call.
To kind of let them know that, that's the reason he's not in this picture because he's no longer with us. I took care of business.
That's right, and it's a great, it's a great subterfuge there, because they don't know what happened. They figure he was going out to get it. The spear was on the line, and they know he wants that, and they don't know anything about his other job. There's a moment that we didn't mention where Michael Biehn looks at the child in his little satchel, and he's like, "What's that thing?" And Amanda's like, "I keep it for luck." So they don't even have a guess as to why he's really there. He was just a dude drifting in town, and they figured, hey, a Mandalorian, this is our solution to the Jedi problem. Right. And so for all intents and purposes, they have every reason to believe that Ahsoka beat him.
Yeah. And so she releases the dogs on him, so you get, several of these henchmen, you get the assassin droids, even Michael Biehn, they all start chasing after her. And she turns to what's left there and says, assassinate them. So she's wanting them to kill the hostages that are hanging around. And then she says, then after that, go door to door. So not only kill these hostages, kill everybody in the town. Right. She's just that kind of person. And she walks away and the door shuts behind her. And then who saves the day? That's right. Din swings in, saves the day, and starts freeing the hostages, and you start seeing people coming out in the street. There's one guy in particular who used to be the
mayor
counselor of the
or whatever,
town, or
yeah.
the mayor, yeah. And he comes out and gives Dan a little head nod, like, man, phew, that was a close one. And then when he's doing that, you see one of the assassin droids is on the roof. He's like, look out behind you, and he shoots him in the face real quick. It's so great. It's so great. Oh,
yeah, it's good stuff.
And of course, she's just, she's separating these people that are chasing her when, Asana Taco's just, Asana Taco.
Asana Taco. I kind of wanted an Asana Taco this morning. Good morning. I gave you an Asana Taco.
But she's got them separated, and she's just knocking them off, just a pair at a time. Even splits one of the assassin droids in half.
Yeah.
And that's when the one rolls up the roof. That's so cool. But that's the one that Mando ends up shooting in the face. And so he's keeping guard there at the front gate of the temple. And Michael Biehn comes running back. Well, not Michael Biehn, but Lang.
Yeah, right.
And so here we go. Now you got your two guys. You kind of got the high noon, gunslinger kind of thing happening here. But inside the temple, Asana's gotten in there, and she's facing off with Morgan, and it's just incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, so earlier when Mando went and talked to her about the job, she's sitting in this, I guess it's like a Japanese reflection garden. It's got like the pool, and it's got a lot of little pagodas and lanterns, and so you have this setting. And it's like the end of Kill Bill or like you said, any samurai kung fu movie. There's this garden that this last battle's going to occur in, and Ahsoka shows up, and Elspeth or Morgan Elspeth, brings out her Beskar spear, and at this point that the Beskar can block the lightsaber because it happened in the fight between Din and Ahsoka. So they just start going, and it's a great melee combat. Ahsoka with twin lightsabers, and Morgan with her Beskar spear, and at the same time, you've got Lang and Mando, who Lang's like, oh, so you threw in with the Jedi, huh? And Mando's like, yeah, looks like it. And they're just kind of standing there, and so Lang starts saying, well, let's just see what happens. And so they start listening over the wall. Like, if your guy wins, then I guess we'll fight. And if my guy wins, then maybe I'll just walk away. And, that's the kind of guy Lang is. He's not looking to die for honor. He just wants to collect a paycheck. And if his employer's gone, he's out too. Yeah.
Yeah, and even through that whole conversation, look, I don't have any quarrel with you. And he acts like he's going to walk on past Den, and he's like, hold on, that's far enough. And he puts his hand at his blaster. So you realize right there that this is not going to end well.
Right.
And go ahead.
I was just, and so you got these two showdowns occurring, and I mean the fight between Ahsoka and Morgan is just fantastic. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's top notch. If you drew it out for another 10 or 15 minutes, it would be equivalent to the big fights that we've seen in the movies.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really, really that good. And at the end of it, Ahsoka has the saber at her throat and says, tell me where Thrawn is.
I think she says, where's Grand Admiral Thrawn, doesn't she?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so this is apparently who she answers to, her boss. That opens a whole nother can of worms in the Star Wars universe. So
yeah. So you mean like if this is my issue with canon, like it's canon until it's not, and then when you want it to be canon again, you bring it back in, and so there's no sense in ever even writing a story and trying to pretend it's part of a continuation. But I digress. I've read the Heir to the Empire series. Heir to the Empire, Last Command is the last one, and the Phantom Brigade, I think, is the second one. I'll have to look them up, but they are fantastic books. And the protagonist in that has taken over the failing empire is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Yep. And he is just awesome. So, when I heard that, I had to admit I was a little excited.
Yeah, I mean, so, here we go again, right? So, again, what we've talked about, what we love about what they've done so far with this is being able to tie in all of the different stories and stuff. Now, it's amazing that it's working as well as it is now. So you're even reaching, like you said, how do you, it's canon at one point, now it's not, and you're still bringing these factors into everything. It blows my mind. It does make you wonder, okay, how are you going to tie all this in? And again, that ties us all the way back to who took him out of the Jedi Council. So, again, it's that thing of we're giving you answers, but we're going to open up a whole other can of questions for you.
Yeah, I suppose it just depends on how much history you think you can cram into 30 years, right? Because that's the way it goes. Is between all these movies and shows, they're giving you a span of a couple of decades. And they're saying, hey, easily in a couple of decades, there could be a rise and fall of the Imperial remnant, So, yeah, that did happen, and still the sequels did occur, and it's still part of a plot line. It's watching history get filled in, and they're just deciding what does and doesn't belong, from the early works. And Timothy Zahn did a fantastic thing with those 3 books. I don't know what they're going to do with it in The Mandalorian. It seems pretty honored. It's pretty faithful to the history as it is, and I have high hopes. But man, you always hear the book is better than the movie. If you want to read those 3 books, I highly recommend them. They're great.
Yeah, and another thing too is, something that I realized too is after the fight, after she holds. Ahsoka holds the saber up to Morgan's neck and says, "Tell me where Thrawn is." That's all you see.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't know that Morgan was killed?
Nope. We don't know if she even found out where Thrawn was.
Right. So again, more questions to focus on later on. But the great thing is the village has been freed. And they're going back to life before these morons showed up and tore up everything. And we kind of get where Ahsoka has Morgan's spear, which could lend to she killed her.
Yeah.
Or maybe she just left.
Give me that.
Right. And she gives it to Mando, says, hey, you know, here's your reward. And he's like, I can't take that. I didn't finish the job. But ends up taking it, and he goes back to get Grogu, and we get the speech again, right? I can't train him.
Yeah. And I just want to say that, like, at the end here, during this celebration, you get kind of like a pan flute rendition of the Mandalorian theme that's awesome. It has has the trappings of Endor at the end of Return of the Jedi, and it's the Mandalorian theme, but it's upbeat and kind of whistly with like I said, kind of a pan flute sound. It's pretty awesome.
Zamfir blasting it out, sitting over on a box of, I don't know. He's sitting in the set over there.
He's the new mayor is Zamfir over there with Mako.
Never fear, Zamfir is here.
No. But to your point, then they go back to Mando and Grogu and he says, okay, well, it's time to unload this kid. Good luck training him. And she says, I can't do it, but if you take him to an ancient temple on Tython, I had to write it down because I didn't want to say Python. If you take him to Tython, where there's an ancient temple, and we all know how ancient temples go, if you know anything about Mos Espa and where Yavin 4 and all that stuff, then he can become a beacon of the Force on the apex of this ancient Jedi temple, and maybe a Jedi will sense him and come to help you.
Yeah.
What are the chances?
Yeah. Right. Of course, in my mind, I'm going, why don't she didn't have to train him? Why don't she just keep him. Just guard him. You don't have to train him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just like Mando, she's like, I got stuff to do and I can't have a kid hanging around, which is kind of his whole thing, right? He's like, I've got stuff to do and this baby is really slowing me down.
She's too busy doing the Captain Kirk, Thrawn! Thrawn!
Well, I mean, she obviously has some kind of a mandate because she knows Thrawn's out there and she must realize how dangerous he is. And, well, with the Empire coming back, it's absolutely something that she needs to be on.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, Mando loads up again. He's just like, well, crap.
On the road again.
And he flies off, and that's kind of where the episode ends. But I'm sure that we're going to see these characters a bit more as this rolls on.
Yeah, again, it's a fantastic episode. The pacing is on point. The music is great. The characters are alive. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, and just, getting to see these characters that have become iconic through the books and the animated series, it's really a treat to get to experience these in live action. And again, I can't say it enough, the casting they're doing for these is just, you couldn't get any better. And, fantastic episode. Agreed.
I give it a full-throated recommendation. It's the best one so far.
And I'm starting to see more and more people starting to lighten up and start checking the show out too. Not necessarily this podcast, but the actual Mandalorian show, because I know a lot of people were hesitant because, you get burned and you feel like, they're just crapping on my childhood again. But I'm seeing more and more people come around and everybody is really saying what we've been saying along. Wow, this is really, really good. So, I couldn't be happier where this thing is going and the possibilities that it opens up for other series.
Yeah, I mean, you can see what it looks like when it's done right.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's all I got, man.
Me too. I just wanted to say, if you're listening to the show and you enjoy the Mandalorian, then, we're glad that we can bring this to you. And I absolutely enjoy doing this. If there's anything that you want us to add, if there's any trivia you want us to do, we can do our job and try and bring you something extra. But just enjoy us if we do. And if you don't, then let us know what we can do.
Well, I did see where, and we tapped on a few of them, but, I saw where somebody said there was 53 Easter eggs in this episode. And I'm like, holy crap. So obviously the diehard fans are going to point out things that we may not be that familiar on, but at the same time, again, we know we're not the know-all, see-all of the Star Wars universe, but we just know that we really love it.
Yeah, and we're glad to share it with you. If you are one of those people that caught all 55 or you watched it until you got them all, we're glad to share this with you. And if you're like, man, these guys don't know anything, well, more power to you.
We just recorded an episode that's longer than the episode itself. So
right.
that ought to tell you something. But, folks, we will do this again. We will see you next week. Don't forget to check out our other show, the Helming Power Hour. We're cranking out some stuff over there, too. So hope you enjoy that. And we will see you later on.
I have spoken. I've never met a real Mandalorian. Heard stories. Really good at killing.
Find Ahsoka Tano. Tell her you were sent by Bo-Katan. This is the way.